definitely right of center. But our country is right of center too. We're pretty conservative people outside of certain population centers. But that said, most of the problems that our country is facing are not ideological sort of problems. To my mind, they're common sense. You don't spend more money than you have. That's not a real complicated issue. You set priorities. We have a constitution. You follow it. If we did those few things right there, 90% of the issues we talk about on talk radio and on our television news shows would go away. So my emphasis really is on those common sense solutions. Let's start with those things rather than the marginal things. I think most of us can agree on those. Now, regrettably, our Congress right now seems to be led by people who are driven by ideology. They favor planning over allowing people to make decisions for themselves about how to best invest their money, about where to send their children to school. They favor a highly regulated economy on a number of fronts, from environmental regulations to workplace safety. I resist that. I am a conservative, but that said, I try and set a reasonable tone, and I am prepared to work across the aisle with any person of goodwill and common sense that wants to address these issues with me. Does that answer your question? Yes, sir.
I have grandchildren that have great-grandchildren just starting to come to the road, 2-year-old great-grandson, 4-year-old great-granddaughter, and an infant great-grandson. My concern is what has happened to us in the last month or so with this health care legislation and the debt that it has put on them. How are we going to turn that around to where they will have any kind of future? I don't see a future for them right now, maybe even as good as the future that we have, a better life. How's that going to happen? And do you have any ideas on how to get that turned around?
I do. Yes, sir. I thank you for the question. The thrust of your question, you mentioned health care. I think the larger question was this just incredible growth of government and debt we're passing on to our children and grandchildren. How are we going to address that? I do have thoughts on that. We have, before I address that, let me tell you just how serious the situation is from my perspective. I've seen varying figures about what our liabilities are at the federal level. But the number that I see most often quoted is $60 trillion of unfunded liabilities. In other words, if Uncle Sam had to keep their books the way they require corporate America to keep their books, our national balance sheet would be $60 trillion in the red. $60 trillion. Now, let's break that down because it's hard to get your brain around $1 trillion. Big figure. $60 trillion is $500,000 for every family of 4 in America. That's right now. That's our current economic situation. So think of your credit card debt. Consider your mortgage that you're carrying. And add onto your real life balance sheet, because you own some of this debt, add $500,000 worth of obligations. Pretty scary, isn't it? That's why I talk about we're running out of time to deal with these issues. Now, is that a Democrat issue? Is that a Republican issue? Heck no, that's an American issue. It's something we all ought to care about. And that goes back to your question, sir. I will cooperate with anyone, whatever party they want to identify themselves with, if they have a viable, they have some viable solutions for dealing with that situation. We're going to sit down at the same table and see if we can join arms and try and work on addressing it. I have some specific thoughts. I actually think that does everyone remember when we closed military bases several years back? That BRAC process, base realignment and closure, what we did is we created... Oh, you did? This gentleman just said he had to move because of it. I don't know if this will get any applause from him, but you know, there's a model there. It was a very difficult issue, politically difficult issue to address. We had military bases located in congressional districts or near congressional districts all around this country. And so no one wanted to close their base, but they all knew that somebody else's bases had to be closed because we didn't need all these military bases after the Cold War. So how are we going to do it? Well, the solution we had was to have an independent commission, convene an independent commission, get members of Congress involved, but also have some policy experts involved, have military brass as part of that conversation, and then also include local communities. And this commission was supposed to come up with recommendations about the first tier of bases that ought to close, and then the second tier and the third tier. Why not take this sort of concept and apply it to our budget issues? You know, how are we going to reform some of these social programs that many people have, for better or worse, come to depend on in a way that all of us can live with? I can tell you right now, I'm age 37, and I can adjust my expenditures and my expectations quite a bit. One of the things that we need to be very careful about is those who are approaching retirement age. We need to take care of those people because they don't have much time to change their savings and whatnot. So I have some real moral concerns with that. But the larger procedural issue here is I would favor a commission like that that would then provide to Congress one sort of silver bullet solution, one package of reforms that would put us on the path towards being fiscally solvent, subject to an up or down vote. Because I think that would change the political calculus of some of these difficult issues. If you're faced with a vote, you're a member of Congress, and this vote is billed as an effort, if you vote no, then you're voting against this plan that will put us on a path that won't pass debt to our children and grandchildren. If you vote yes, it might be politically sensitive, but you can go home and tell people, look, we did it for the future. This had to be done at some time. So I think that's the best solution I've heard so far. But let me say this, I don't think there's enough trust right now between we the people and members of Congress to get that done. There's some other things that need to occur first. First, we have to stop vesting our congressional pensions after 5 years. Second, we need to kick the pork barrel earmarking habit. Now, I can live with some earmarks, some that are consistent with the Constitution, some that are spent on things that all of us think are worthy causes. Fire engines for the local force or something like that. It doesn't strike me as some horrible pork barrel expenditure, but when you're spending $1 million on a water-free urinal initiative or money on mariachi music grants or national peanut festivals, indoor rainforests, lobster research, in the grand scheme of things, as compared to our national economy, our national budget, that's not tons of money, but it undermines trust in our elected officials. How can you ask somebody to deal with changes in Medicare or Medicaid or Social Security if you can't trust them to not spend $1 million on a water-free urinal? So that's part of the equation too. There are a lot of things that need to be addressed here, and I'll make very clear, I'm not running to be Speaker of the House of Representatives. I'm running to be one of 435 members. So I can't dictate the agenda, but I will be part of the solution. We have a question back there?
What would be your feelings on if it came up with
The question was about the line item veto. Supreme Court has spoken on this. They've indicated there's some constitutional hurdles, so we'll have to go over. Maybe have to pass a constitutional amendment in order to enact a line item veto. My concern about the line item veto, let me first talk about the good aspects of it. good aspects is it gives the president the ability to